Alright, you guys, I'm gonna show you guys what I'm working on right now here in a second. I'm just gonna see if anybody pops in and I'll get started. Can you make sure your Wi-Fi's off? Probably is. It says on. Yeah, you're good. I'm waiting for it to find it. Alright, you guys, I got both live feeds going. Let's see here. Alright, let's see if we can get the phones so we both can see. Yeah, that thing's fuzzy no matter what, huh? Fucking phone. Piece of shit. Hey buddy, how are you? We're gonna talk about some shift cable stuff. Alright, let's see here. Let's see if I can... I don't know. Alright, well, we're gonna talk about the shift cable solution for the Accord box and transmission with the K-tuned K20 cables, knockoff cables, hybrid racing cables, any cable that's a threaded end cable with the Heims or billet ends for your shift box. Basically today, or I guess starting before, so I've used the hybrid racing box, K20 box, and K-tune box in builds. The K-tune cables, the stock RSX cables, the stock H cables, race cables from K-tuned hybrid, as I said. So basically what's going on is with the H series we made a custom bracket. We ended up adjusting the Heim ends thread wise to make sure the cables had play, making an end bracket for the transmission. Now on the Accord box, the forward back shifter location for that threaded cable is too far back. You would definitely have to trim into the cable and thread the end, or do like a weld-on solution where you'd slip sleeve it and just TIG it. And they're $50 knockoff cables. You could totally do that. If you bought the real cables, probably wouldn't want to do that, right? Now, the Bulb Boost $120 billet box for the Accord Trans, not the $80 eBay K-tune knockoff box. You can use the race cables with that and modify the lengths just like this. But that Accord shifter box does have a better design. It's more of like a balanced shifter setup, pendulum setup, where the upper part of the shifter above the axes is the shifter part you grab with your hand, and the linkage isn't up there, so back isn't pulling on the cable. It's at the bottom below the axes, so it's like a pendulum versus a lever. It pivots. So when you're going third gear, shifter forward or forward, that pendulum, the shifter's moving forward, the pendulum's going back. So it's the opposite direction of the tranny for the RSX. Now, the direction doesn't matter, it's the cable length. So don't get that twisted. The box and the tranny match, which means the movement for the shifter forward is going to match the transmission shifter forward. I've seen that the shifter mechanism on the later model K20 trans is similar looks-wise, different bracket, but the mechanism is similar looking. I don't know if it's the same as far as the forward back and then the shift fork moving arm. If that's the same orientation and maybe just the bracket and bolt pattern's different or something. They do make a bolt bracket to utilize some form of race cables, because they do make them for the Accord style trans through K-Tuned, and I think Jack Spania. Also, they have like a $20 to $50 OEM option, which you could always use those OEM Accord cables, OEM box, or billet box from Bull Boost, and then the Accord trans be good, or the full K stuff. Now again, with the H, we built a bracket. Doing my research tonight using the Accord box, which isn't the stock box, it's a race box. It has a provision for the race cable, which is farther out. Keeps me from having to actually lose length on the cable to where I have to extend it. It's just a lot easier to extend than it is to shorten. You shorten it, you cut it, you end up with issues where the cable's maxing out on the housing and you have to trim the housing back, and it has these like tube sleeves to keep the shift cable from going floppy and binding or anything, to keep it a firm, good shift, to make that cable do what it does, and you're not over exceeding one of the ends so that it comes out and it's actually not the solid rod, it's actually cable there. So this solution involves just extending both ends. Now the solution I figured out is about $3 or $4. It's pretty easy. When the guy gave me the box, David, highly thank you, appreciate it so much. I thought I was getting a stock plastic box and I got the billet box. I used the stock bracket on the transmission, and I'm gonna grind it a little to make sure that the bungs for the K-Tune cables can pass through. The Accord style uses like a pinch plate. There is a possibility that I could slip the cable over and drop it in, and then shim the front of that with a stack of washers or something, to make it basically bulky, and then use those pinch plates, those two 10mm held down pinch plates, to pinch the cable. From now, it looks like I can slip it through the back. The diameter's right to thread it on. It's too thick to be threaded. I'd have to flip the nut around that tightens the K-Tuned cable into the housing for the bracket. Flip that nut around so the threads are all the way at the end, because it's off on this end, or I'd have to cut that nut down to just the nut and not the shroud that goes over it to shield the cable. Now I'm just going to flip it. And then that bracket on the trans, I'm going to have to take the grinder. Luckily, it's open-faced on either side. I can take the grinder and basically just take some of the thickness away and narrow that. Then I can flip that nut around, screw it on. So it's not really ghetto. It's not the right way to do it. It's not like shit's going to be flopping around or loose or have play. It's just not the right way to do it. I'll shim it. I'll make sure that the hole is fully covered and it's outside, like a nut sitting halfway over on the side, and it's kind of fucking wanting to pop off and be half-assed and pop off during racing, da-da-da. I'll do it proper. I'll take care of that. A couple washers that are slotted to slip over or something, or grind the housing. Not a big deal. Now, the ends that need to be extended. Both ends, I believe the side-to-side cable from the billet end that comes on the cables need to be extended roughly an inch and a half. Solution for that, along with, I had the OEM cables from the Accord. The threaded end is for like a bolt to go through so it can push and pull on the cable for the RSX box, whereas on the Accord box there's a bolt going in the bottom of the shifter because it's like that pendulum setup, and it pinches it. Now there's a Heim joint that comes on one of those K20 cables from eBay, but it's plastic. I think they used to come with billet aluminum, and it's probably different factories making these cables, so they're all slightly different. But I've gotten cables before and it had the billet ends. I don't think it had a plastic end, but now that I'm thinking about it, it might have. Either way, that end we're not going to use. We're going to use one of the non-pivoting ends, because that arm just goes forward, back, and it just has to swivel like this. So what I'll do is we're going to take a little bit of width off of this. So the width of this is narrower than the width of this. The cable's pretty much in line when threaded in here with the arm. This bulkiness kind of pushes it off. Well, I'm going to use a neoprene washer, neoprene or nylon. nylon washer, the flat ones are like as thin as a sheet of paper. They're really slippery discs. They use them on the stock shifter cables to keep them moving. They're literally like a flat piece of paper thin shim washer that's made out of plastic, nylon, right? We'll take the width off of this to take it down to the diameter of this shaft or the thickness of this shaft. And then we'll put a nylon washer on either side. We'll run our bolt in, and then we'll double nut it on the back. The shaft is threaded. I'll run a nut on to lock it so the bolt doesn't over tighten or become loose. If I have to, I'll double nut it, get it to where it has just a little bit of play if those threads get fucked up. For the front solution, we're going to thread all thread or a bolt with the head cut off, whatever, about 5, 6, 7 threads in here Loctited. Then we'll take a thread nut that's the same threading as this. We'll screw it on, butt it up against here. It'll stick off about that far. Well, I cut it so that the end of the shifter cable ends about right here. It needed to be extended. So that thread nut will extend on. So it will be all Loctited together. If I ever need to remove it, I can. Great. On this one, the diameter is correct to not slip inside of here, but to match the outer diameter of the threads. This is the OEM cable from the Accord cables. This is to adapt it to the stock shifter, also with the length extension already integrated. So I cut it off at the right length. We're going to run a die down this, and then screw on one of the long thread nuts to this, Loctited. And then this is about, a couple millimeter away from the cable now because I cut it to the right length. That thread nut will then thread onto the OEM cable. Just how this threaded onto the OEM cable, we're basically now using 2 thread nuts in between these 2 units to thread on as the extension. Pretty simple, pretty cheap, should only cost a couple dollars. I'll show you guys physically what's going on tomorrow. I'm going to go to Ace and grab this stuff. If I end up throwing it on the car, I'll do that video at the same time. If I do the video at a different time, I will show you guys on the car. I'll show you when I grab this stuff, kind of what it's going to look like, or I'll kind of pre-assemble it in the car and show you. And then at worst, that'll again turn into a 2-part video. And when I go see the car, I'll show you me installing it and how the cables work and this and that. If you're using the OEM box, Accord box, and you want to use the race cables using the plastic Accord box, one thing I would recommend is to make your life easier, do go to this end regardless to make it a bolt-on affair. If you can run a die down this and a thread nut for less than $5, make it nice and easy. The other thing that you're going to have to overcome is a length change on the forward to back shifter cable. You're gonna have to overcome that. So what I would utilize would be a custom transmission bracket at that point. What I might do is either machine our own billet ends, or basically just come across every junk end of these I can and snip them off and make you guys a couple of these solutions, sell them cheap with the bracket though, so that you can use those eBay knockoff cables, $50 cables. Maybe use a little $80 bracket end combo from me and end out the door, $130, $150 for a solution versus a $300 set of name brand cables. Again, this isn't knocking any of the companies that make this stuff. We're generally getting this stuff to modify it anyways. A lot of stuff we get from companies generally don't work right off the bat, only because they're not generally designed for the application or the motor setup we're using, or those conjoining. So we do end up having to modify a lot of things, more so than not. So sometimes buying these knockoff things to utilize and do it seem just better. I would hate to buy a set of $400 cables just to modify, even if it was a thread on affair, and having it not work. So at least now we'll know if it works. If these cables end up not working out and this solution isn't the problem, I can buy those cables and move to that. Great. Give these cables to somebody to use them in their build. If these cables end up being reliable, great. We keep them, utilize them, and we go on. And I have a feeling that'll be the only other thing I've seen with these cables is slipping out of the housing in between the bracket and end of shifter housing ends for the hand shifter. I'll have a solution for that, you guys. We talked about hydraulic crimping it. There might be more of a solution of tigging it, or doing a crimp setup, maybe with some epoxy filler prior, and then injecting the epoxy filler and then crimping, or utilizing like a basically collar setup with some type of Heim, or even just a flat strap or tube stock with spacers on the end that can bolt on, and basically to keep that end from slipping out. Now this is a solution for stuff we're finding with these eBay knockoff parts that still wouldn't cause us to go to a 500% markup part from this. For example, if it's a part that's going to cause catastrophic failure, expensive part. If it's a part that can be utilized and tested and used and we're not going to have a problem and we're pretty sure and so on and so forth, we'll probably end up using that. So again, this isn't to knock any companies or anybody spending their money on parts, this and that. I like to make stuff on budget. I'm a budget guy. I like to do junkyard builds. I don't have a problem with it. I do stuff myself. So anybody that's like that, get at me. Budget K-swaps, budget turbo kits, all getting available. Working with the engine management system solution right now, because that seems to be the issue between the older gen setups and new, considering pricing is pretty much matching now. So here we go. So have this car done in about a week. Show you guys some more updates as things go. I think I got ripped off on the turbo, so we got to order another unit. Otherwise, we'd be probably firing up this weekend. Dylan's doing birthday stuff with his son, so it'll probably turn into next week. So next weekend. And then remember, Dyno Day is just around the corner, 2 to 4 weeks away from next weekend. So 3 to 4 weeks, 3 to 5 weeks from right now. Love to see you guys there. Looking at 100 for 3 pulls, 300 for a street tune prior, dyno tune for your numbers, finish up on the dyno, and you're hooked the fuck up. Street tune price for dyno time. So $100 for 3 pulls, 300 for dyno tune, and all inclusive. Get at me. Get your spot available now. I promise you, when I list them, there's going to be like 1 spot out of 8 available, and you're going to get fucked. So hit me up to do it before. Nobody has RSVP'd right now, but I'm letting you know this isn't a situation where it's like, oh, is this going to happen? This, that, the other. Dylan, and will invite 2 other buddies, and if Harley's car is done at the same time, bring hers, and say fuck it for everybody else, and y'all can pay that $600 for dyno tunes in the future, and we can just get 1 car to go, and it can be a fucking not fun experience because we're not all hanging out kicking it, and it's not that big of a deal, and testing parts is going to cost more. And you can bring different intakes right now and do your 3 runs and do 3 different intakes and find some gains. So I highly recommend getting this RSVP this week. I'm going to call, and I guarantee you everybody I call is going to go, yeah, it's that deadline, let me pay you. And by the time I put it online, there's going to be like 1 spot. So hit me up. Have a good one, you guys. I'll talk to you then.